Na csá!
Hello.
Várjál, már nagyon hangos.
Mati Rolling Magma, de die.
Mati Rolling Magma from Beginning of the Week Season 10.
Season 10, patofexile.com per botve. Oh my god.
Szia, na Odi, na csá!
Ki van itt?
Tudasd a Conti 1337 csatornával, hogy 23 hónapja az előfizetője vagy. Hallott Conti, az van, hogy megyenyúszik az a erdőbe és fotel.
Fagyos
Conti mi
666,
Contilu.
Relic of the Pact Inquisitor.
Frost 666.
Oh my god.
Relic of the Pact.
666-os Frosty. Oh my god. Oh.
Igen, akik nézik a streamet, azok véres szárny effektet kaphatnak. Azt hiszem.
Igen. Oh my god. Omnom Panda, Sakaval, Twister, Inquisitor.
Sakaval, Twister?
Annyira gáz minden Inquisitor bászolja, ahogy verjem vele. Amúgy buffolták azt hiszem a szakaváros amúgy ezt a cuccot. Azt nézd meg! Oh my god! Lightning teleport! Odin mégsem halott? Odin Omnom Panda Szakavár Twister Inquisitorját játsza? Odin mégsem halott a God of Thor. Haló?
Hello.
Bevasz?
Nincsen iszonyatos hype, mint mi.
Mi hogy ne lenne? 73 000 ember.
Na ne, ez az a build, ez az a build. Aksaj Wardloop Sion?
Wardloop Sion?
Már itt teljesen úgy értettem.
Ja, hát nem tudom.
User joined your channel.
Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Aksaj Wardloop Sion? Na, várjál, már nem látunk úgy buildet sajnos.
Mindjárt mutatják az enyémhez.
Igen?
Ha?
Marci, Strength Statsking Chefté?
Nem Marci PVN Cleave, mert
Nem a Viper Strike Championon a 2016-ból.
Viper Strike Totem.
Oh my god, Frostblink, Frost Hotstepper, ugye?
Ott van, Devon 75-2-ös Frostblink Elementalist.
Emlékeztek Conti régi nevére? Devon 752 volt amúgy.
de infláció miatt már 1330.
Nem írja a hivatalos streamben, hogy kapnám a droppot.
Majd egészkor szerintem bekapcsolódik, vagy ami eszetően kell szerintem. Mi a faszon játszod a Frostblink? Annyira clunky, de jó.
Te most nem ezzel akarsz kezdeni? Hát de Jebét itt hol
de
van?
nézd meg, és így ott van a pak fele, bazzeg.
Itt a levelingelé.
Ja, és ja, igen, ez a kedvencem.
Azt a bossra milyen jó.
Igen, Dorca boss. Nem mondjuk. Amúgy.
Hát megölted. Ezt is szvízom, vágjátok.
Thanks for joining us for today's live stream as
Göndet
we
hamarobb
reveal our
beszél.
upcoming
Igen,
expansion
figyelme, Marci, a te ebédedet kivágták.
which launches on December 9th on
F5-öljétek, és
PC
akkor
and Mac
elkezdődik a
and on
top
December
számlálás amúgy.
14th on console.
Most hál' Istennek
Twitch
reklámot
drops are
nézek.
enabled on today's live stream, so make sure you follow the instructions below in order to claim your Bloodguard wings. Here's what you can expect from today's live stream. We'll start by debuting the trailer for the Forbidden Sanctum, and we'll then do a deep dive on the league
Elvileg majd
itself.
Tarkóban is lesz egyszer
We'll
ilyen, hogy
cover this
ezeket így
expansion's new
megmutatják.
in-game revamps and
Massively
content,
buffed unique
and then we'll
weapons.
have a look at all
De
the new
már, basz
skills
meg,
we're
rohadt
introducing.
cool a reklám.
We'll then
Rohadt
reveal some
meg.
new
Az
unique
nekem is
items
sokszor
and then
van,
massive
bazd meg,
buffs and
amúgy
rarity
nagyon rossz.
adjustments we have made to a variety of endgame unique weapons. We'll then briefly cover some balance topics that we have posted articles about recently.
Okay.
Jewels, curses, and the replacement of the arch nemesis monster mod system. Finally, we'll discuss the upcoming release of the optional Ruthless
Imádom,
game
hogy az
mode
összes
before
patós
touching on
geci
some
amúgy
quality of life
Path of Exile
improvements and the
streamel.
new supporter packs. The livestream concludes with a Q&A session between Ziggy D and me, where we'll answer questions from Twitch chat. Then we'll drop the full patch notes. Let's get started with a trailer for the Forbidden Sanctum, which
Ez a
launches in
meglepő
1
lesz
week.
patch notes is rögtön.
Ja, én szeretem ezt az új cuccot amúgy.
Jó, amúgy fasza, nem kell várni rá.
Ja, azt, hogy nem ilyen utolsó 2 napba adják ki, ennek tökre örülök azt, hogy így egyből kidobják amúgy. Sokkal jobb rendszer.
Nem 2 nappal előtt.
Jön már gyertyás.
De sejmes.
So, step lightly. But here you are bound by new rules.
Ingi, hogy mi ez, Ventiléjó.
Puss már, magad.
Each step with gold to tempt you. A foe to wound you. A curse to spite you.
No ne.
But do not give up. For vast riches await the bold. Pillage this sanctum if you must.
Nekem tetszik, hogy így veszik fel a
And one day
No,
you will uncover its
Azt
secrets.
tudod, milyen izés? Ez most roguelike. Milyen roguelike?
Ez most Davis Fire.
Adom. Aha, ezt annyira nem adom.
Ez jól, azonnal halsz.
Anyád, ez
Arról milyen jól néznek ki.
Ez hiszi a
Ez mi a fasz?
No ne.
Ez szar.
Oda néz.
Na, izé volt használod. Nézd már.
Oda néz. Két mesztelen férfi üti egymást a strandon.
Jézusom, egy lasszó. Ezek elég menők néznek ki, ezek a nagy bosszok.
Ja, úgy alig a...
Nem jön akkor ez ez heist?
Hát ez olyan, mint egy...
Alig a content szerintem jól néz ki egyébként.
Jól néz ki. Úgy néz ki, mint egy heist, egy másmilyen heist.
Mehet a Nové és van a Conti chaten.
Nové.
De most hogy mutattak 2 új skills, és jól látta.
Aha.
De egyik izé, ez egy Thunder MTX konkrétan.
Szerintem látni fogjuk, ahogyan most beszélek Chrisról le, ugye?
Most fog. Várjál, még nem.
Várjál?
Erza apukája most beszél mindjárt.
The Forbidden Sanctum is an old Templar enclave, long rumored to be hidden beneath the Fell Shrine ruins. Abandoned for a long time, it is now controlled by a malevolent entity. In this league, you'll explore it, find out its secrets, and deal with the evil that lurks there. The Sanctum Challenge League is a roguelike game, played out one room at a time as you explore Rayclast and the Atlas in Path of Exile. In every area or map you enter, you can make a choice of which room in the Sanctum you will explore next. On the Sanctum map, you can see the contents of a few rooms ahead, enabling you to plot a path through its dangerous halls.
És lesz bolt, gondolom,
And
ha
the
lehet
Sanctum
tenni a
is
pénzt.
dangerous. Like most roguelikes, you should not expect to be able to complete it on your first try. Getting to the deeper floors requires knowledge and luck. You should expect that your early attempts will fail, but over time, you'll be able to push yourself farther and farther.
Ja, nem
As you
az.
progress deeper into the Sanctum, you'll find a variety of
Nem
treasures
halsz
that will
meg,
help
csak...
you eventually fight your way to the dangers that await you at the
Akkor
end
miért
of
Ja,
the
persze,
floors.
fixem.
Eventually,
Jaj,
by
nem halt
endgame,
meg.
you may be able to cross more floors to face the final boss.
Final
Every
boss.
roguelike needs a resource to help you track how well the run is going. In the Forbidden Sanctum, it is your resolve, indicated by this bar here. As you explore the Sanctum, your resolve is threatened by the dangers within. When you lose all of your resolve, your Sanctum run ends.
Hát akkor
Your
azért
level of resolve is
feküdtem el,
maintained
elfogyt a
in
resolve.
consecutive rooms on your run, but is only
Akkor meg is
shown
tudsz
when
halni
you're in the Sanctum
alapvetően.
itself.
Igen, igen.
The resolve mechanic applies equally to all build archetypes. Your resolve is reduced when you are hit by monsters or environmental hazards in the Sanctum, and these telegraphed attacks are not affected by regular Path of Exile defensive
Telegraphed
mechanics,
attacks,
such as
Scorpion.
evasion, armor, or block. While these attacks do some nominal damage to your regular life, the
Aha.
bulk of their impact
Some
is against
nominal
your
damage.
resolve.
Nem, én attól
This
félek amúgy,
mechanic
hogy...
provides a mechanism for tracking
Azt mondja, hogy a
your
resolve-ot
progress between
sebzi
rooms,
főként.
where your regular life
Ja,
pool
ja,
long
tehát hogy
ago have been
az
recovered.
lesz a szomorú,
Another
nem azt, hogy
aspect of
meghalni
the
fogsz, hanem
resolve
hogy nem
system
tudod
is that
kitocsolni
characters
az
who are
ilyen
struggling can be
a
ejected
resolve-ot
from the
eltenni.
Sanctum without actually having to die, avoiding experience loss or hardcore death. So maintaining a
Az tök
healthy
jó.
level of resolve is key as you navigate the Sanctum. and that means making careful choices of what rooms you enter. Let's have a look at some of the things that Sanctum rooms can contain. Afflicted rooms cause you to gain affliction when you enter them. Afflictions make your Sanctum run more difficult. For example, reducing your resolve recovery, causing rewards to become hidden on the Sanctum map, or causing Sanctum rooms to spawn volatile anomalies that follow you. These minor afflictions accumulate as you get deeper and deeper into a run. Major afflictions exist and are a big deal. They have significant consequences, such as entirely preventing the recovery of resolve. So, the Sanctum run gets harder and harder as you pick up more afflictions. Sounds great. But every roguelike needs a way for you to gain power throughout your run. In the Forbidden Sanctum, that system is boons. Boons are beneficial buffs that help you as you progress through the Sanctum. Minor boons make things a little easier, such as slowing down monsters or adding a special shield to your resolve. Major boons don't come along often, but have large effects, such as preventing you from receiving more minor afflictions, or recovering your resolve to 50% the next time you run out. Due to the vast variety of afflictions and boons, no two runs are the same. Your best Sanctum runs are the ones where the afflictions you choose have little effect on you, and the boons either counteract them or have a large benefit for the strategy you're running. Some rooms in the Sanctum contain a fountain which will restore some of your lost resolve. Others contain afflicted fountains that restore even more resolve at a cost. Rooms with a treasure reward contain chests full of the Templar Aureus currency, a type of gold coin they used for commerce within their Sanctum. You'll also find some Aureus coins from monsters that you kill as you explore. These are picked up automatically, like Azurite, and are not tradable. And like your afflictions and boons are lost when your Sanctum run ends. Some rooms contain a merchant who accepts your Aureus coins in exchange for boons. Plan your purchases carefully, as you may encounter the merchant again later on with even more expensive boons to purchase. Occasionally, the sinister powers controlling the Sanctum will present you with the choice of making an accursed pact. You are given several pacts to choose from, and can even opt to take all that you are offered. All pacts have a big upside and a big downside, such as exchanging a portion of your maximum resolve for a random major boon. It's very dangerous to make a pact, but if you pick the right circumstances, your gamble could pay off. In addition to rewards that help you progress through the Sanctum, many rooms let you immediately receive path of Exile currency items. Whenever you're offered some currency items you can receive right away, you are also offered a more valuable It's a gamble, because if you fail the run before you reach and defeat the boss, you will not receive the reward you picked. Later on, you're offered the extreme temptation of getting a massive currency reward that is conditional on completing your entire Sanctum run without failing. At a specific point in the Forbidden Sanctum, you'll discover a special altar that Templar relics can be placed on. These relics directly affect your Sanctum runs and are not lost when a run ends. They persist throughout the league as a permanent source of meta progression. Acquiring new and better relics is one of the ways you can push farther and farther with each run you try. Relics cannot be crafted and cannot be traded, as they represent your personal progression throughout the game. You'll accumulate more than you can use simultaneously, so you'll have options to fine-tune your strategy from run to run. You can store your extra relics in the Relic Locker, a free storage space like the Expedition Locker. We don't want to spoil important story details, but the end boss of the Forbidden Sanctum can drop unique items from a pool exclusive to this league. Today we'd like to show you a unique amulet called Eternal Damnation. This amulet offers a powerful way to gain additional elemental damage by introducing the concept of elemental damage reduction. Despite the drawback of reducing your maximum resistances, if you have sufficient chaos resistance, this is more than compensated. Because of the roguelike nature of the Forbidden Sanctum, defeating the boss of a floor is a difficult achievement and hence rewards a lot of experience. You may fail on the way, so if you do manage it, expect a good experience boost for your achievement. Another reward you can find is a special type of relic called a Sanctified Relic that has mods that directly affect your character's build. You can only unlock one slot for this type of relic, and while these relics can't be crafted through conventional means, you may find special reward rooms in the Sanctum that can modify them. These relics exist for this league only and provide a boost to character power for players who are able to master the Sanctum. The Sanctum League offers a roguelike experience that tempts you into taking risks and rewards you if those pay off. There's a lot to explore in the Sanctum League. To hear about your experiences
annyira nem
next week.
nehéz, bazd meg, mint a laptrián, ne csináljátok meg.
In each expansion leading up to Path of Exile 2's release, we're improving Path of Exile's endgame with new content to explore and improvements to how you customize your endgame experience. In the Forbidden Sanctum expansion, we're revamping the Atlas tree, reworking how Eldritch altars function, and are introducing 2 new Atlas memories. The Atlas tree is generally working really well, but has a few problems we'd like to address. The tree offers you the ability to specialize in killing pinnacle bosses, providing extra rewards when you do so. While this sounds good on paper, it creates a situation where you're incentivized to specialize your tree for regular mapping, save up all of your boss fights, then respec fully into boss mode, and then do all of your saved up boss fights before speccing back again.
Yep.
Ideally, the design of the Atlas tree is that you spec into one build and then just play the game. We have removed all boss bonuses from the Atlas tree, and have baked some of them into the actual base properties of the boss fight. For example, you don't need to allocate the Gaze into the Abyss notable that makes the Elder more likely to drop a Watcher's Eye, as he just has that drop chance built in now. The Atlas tree is now focused on allowing you to specialize into content that you encounter in every map. We also want you to be able to specialize into your favorite leagues even more deeply on the Atlas tree. For each of the 10 leagues that the tree lets you disable, we've added a bunch more passives to the tree. These new passives allow you to increase the league's spawn chance to much higher levels than currently possible, and juice the league even further than before.
Further beyond.
We are making a number of changes to Eldritch altars that mostly affect their rewards, but will also affect gameplay decisions you make involving them. Some of the key changes include splitting up the basic currencies, Scarab, and Divination card rewards to be explicit in their description of what rewards you'll get. For example, instead of map bosses dropping 3 unknown basic currency items, the altar specifically says which currency item will drop. As part of this change, we've removed some of the lower value yet quite common currency rewards from the pool, such as Orbs of Augmentation and Orbs of Transmutation. Speaking of scarabs, these will be less available from altars, so their availability elsewhere to offset this.
Nem, mert ő régebben az volt egyébként, hogy az volt a lényeg az, hogy a bosszig kellett elfutnod, és hogyha a boss megölted, miatt bármi altárt fölvettél van, akkor nem kaphatál boss modos altárt, és így cheezelték az egészet.
Exclusive to different influences, so that you know which influence type to invest in if you want to target farm a certain reward. To give you a specific example, if you run maps influenced by, say, Eater of Worlds, you'll see Divine Orbs from the basic currency reward more than twice as often as before. We've also rebalanced rewards so that choices that affect boss drops or influence monster drops are comparatively more valuable. The Wrath of the Cosmos Keystone has been reworked. Previously, it was so rewarding that players felt obligated to use it despite its extreme level of difficulty.
Csak az egyik szemére pislog, mindig egyszerre jobban, nagyon furcsa.
Intensity toned down. You can now also get awakened gems from defeating Maven Witness map bosses. This additional reward helps you awaken returns from various types of influence. For more detail on these changes, check out the manifesto we posted last week, or the upcoming patch notes. In the Lake of Calandra expansion, we introduced Atlas memories. When applied to your Atlas, they unlock a sequence of maps that tells the story of an NPC's past. These stories may have specialized encounters that involve a new challenge and exciting rewards. In this expansion, we've introduced 2 new Atlas memories, describing events related to Beastry and Domination. The Beastry memory line allows you to capture harvest monsters as beasts for your menagerie. These harvest beasts can be used in 9 new beast crafting recipes. These recipes cover an array of options. For example, you can remove one of the special modifiers from a Watcher's Eye jewel and then add another. This can have potion results, but won't affect the life mana or energy shield modifiers. You can re-roll an awakened gem from one type to another.
Ez az ingyen Cyclone Speed.
Another example is that you can also re-roll a Synthesis Implicit modifier. If your item has more than one Synthesis Implicit, it will randomly re-roll one of them. The Domination Atlas memory thrusts you into a tale of Pantheon gods that stand watch over their shrines. Like regular shrines, these are guarded by monsters and emit a buff that empowers the monsters until you claim that buff for yourself. This Atlas memory introduces a new set of shrines with specialized buffs, guarded by rare monsters that drop tantalizing rewards. The Forbidden Sanctum expansion introduces a new type of shard that can drop from Harbingers, Fracturing Shards. When combined together into a full currency item, you get the Fracturing Orb, which behaves the same as the Fracturing Craft from Harvest. It can be used on any rare item with at least 4 modifiers. When the
arra.
orb is applied, it locks one of the modifiers in place so that further crafting efforts do not affect that modifier.
Dujek.
Items fractured in this way can only have one fractured modifier.
No, ne.
Previously, this crafting option was gated behind the Oshabi fight in Harvest. Now that it has been rehomed to Harbinger, the Harvest crafting option is no longer available. This means that you'll be able to use your Harvest Life Force and Oshabi kills on other crafts. Because fracturing shards drop from Harbingers, you'll be able to target farm them by speccing into Harbinger content on your Atlas tree.
Fixem.
The Forbidden Sanctum expansion introduces a number of new skill gems. In addition to some new melee Val skills we'll discuss later in the livestream, there are 2 totally new skills that we'd like to unveil today. Volcanic Fissure is a new fiery slam skill that can be used with staves, maces, and unarmed. Strike the ground to create a chasm that winds towards your target. This chasm can path around corners before erupt.
Texlem otthon, ugye?
Releases a burst of fire.
Nem, ezt a Sander, ami végén Molten Strike.
Impacts will take a lot of stacked damage. Use it up close for reliable bursts of damage or aim far away to damage a larger area.
Úristen, ezt Totem-el játszani.
Frozen Legion is an unusual spell, summoning a ring of icy statues that attack with your own weapon damage. The skill has multiple cooldown stacks and consumes all cooldown uses at once to summon a statue for each available cooldown. The statues perform a sweeping ice slash, and these sweeps can overlap, resulting in multiple hits against targets close to you.
Hogy erre valami kikapott killer random build amúgy.
És közben ezért
slow heavy weapons.
Azt figyeld,
Glacial Hammer,
úristen, és túléltem.
Ötling
Glacial Hammer, vagy mi a tököm az? This expansion also introduces many new Val melee skills. As you know, equipping a Val skill gem grants you both the Val and regular version of the skill. As you kill enemies, the gem charges up with their souls, and after a certain number are collected, the Val skill can be used once. Most of the new Val skills introduced in this expansion are melee skills, and this results in indirectly melee builds that use one of these skills. Where previously you just been using your melee skill to kill enemies, you now get to periodically use a super-powered version of the skill. Hát ez lófasz, ez mély jó.
If you like Flicker Strike, you'll learn Val Flicker Strike, as it really dials up the concept of letting fate take the wheel. Val Flicker Strike causes you to flicker
Juggernaut ulti, vágod?
During this time, you don't deal any damage to the enemies you slash. You're quite vulnerable to not leeching or generating fortify sticks. When you finish flickering, if you survived, of course, you'll be rewarded with a single damage against each enemy you slashed. Val Cleave is a new Val skill that buffs the behavior of its non-Val version, in a similar way to how Val Read works. Val Cleave triggers 2 buffs, one when you kill a rare enemy, and one when you kill either a rare or unique enemy. The latter is a strong buff to regular cleave, which you can use almost permanently if you're able to kill rare or unique enemies often enough. The bonus of killing a rare enemy is that you get to steal its mods for a time. You can enjoy part of the power of having a headhunter without actually needing to find one.
Bassznek?
Overall,
Ez a
Val
ne
Cleave is a
szevasztok, be van.
Jó, hogy bosszol, hogy kapsz HH-t?
That plus 2
Sehogy,
radius
ezt nem
buff
ölött,
is
te hülye.
looking pretty good now, right?
Valószínűleg a
Don't
HH...
hurt me. We'll showcase the other new Val skills we're introducing over the coming week.
Miért Boston szeretnéd
The
azt
Forbidden
tekniken?
Sanctum expansion introduces over 15 new unique
Még lesz
items,
még
from Sanctum exclusive uniques to ones that can be found from Path of Exile's pinnacle bosses. I'd like to show you 3 examples of these, designed by winners of our prior league's boss kill races. Progenesis is a unique amethyst flask that was designed by Ben and drops from the Uber Maven. It's a defensive flask that grants a mini version of the Petrified Blood effect, but without requiring you to be on low life. This is a useful tool to prevent you getting one-shot by large amounts of incoming damage in scary situations. Rational Doctrine is a unique jewel that was designed by Rawlings and drops from Uber Venarius. By manipulating your attributes, you can change how this jewel behaves. While the ideal dream outcome is that you manage to get your strength and intelligence tied for highest, enabling both of the benefits simultaneously, the jewel is still very powerful if it only grants your choice of permanent consecrated ground or permanent profane ground. Entropic Devastation is a pair of unique gloves that were designed by Gucci Pradas and dropped from the Uber Shaper. Currently, the ways to get Spell Impale are very limited. These gloves provide the powerful property of causing all of your spells to impale on crit. So let's talk about unique weapons. Specifically, in many ways, the weapon is the most iconic and important item on a character, so it's very important that we make them exciting and worthy of their unique status. While some unique weapons have special properties that enable entirely new builds, others are best compared to powerful rare items as a primary source of your character's damage. We have to be very careful when pitching the power level of these unique weapons. If they're not powerful enough, then they're useless and are ignored. But if they're too powerful, then they discourage entire archetypes of characters from trying to find or craft rare weapons. Interestingly, the above problem doesn't apply to belts. Despite Mageblood and Headhunter both existing as extremely powerful unique items, people still craft plenty of rare belts. That's because Mageblood and Headhunter are extremely rare, and people don't actually expect they'll reliably get one in a league. Players tend to treat them as luxury upgrades to their build, rather than something they're certain to get. In this expansion, we're promoting 10 iconic but underused unique weapons to the same tier of rarity as Mageblood and Headhunter. We are buffing them a gigantic amount and then making them incredibly hard to find. Remember when Starforge used to be an exciting item? Well, after this change, it certainly is again. It still drops exclusively from the Shaper and the Uber Shaper, but it'll take a lot of runs or a lot of luck to earn it. Over the next week, we'll reveal the other unique weapons that have been massively buffed. We have targeted around 10 iconic underused unique weapons and have generally buffed only their damage stat, but by a lot. We've made a number of changes to jewels that are covered in a recent balance manifesto, but in case you missed it, we want to quickly summarize what the changes are. In the Forbidden Sanctum expansion, we have made jewels a better source of ailment mitigation by buffing the values of ailment-focused jewel modifiers and adding new modifiers that enable mitigation to a wider variety of ailments than before. We've also introduced ailment mitigation modifiers that were only available on jewels through corruption, because there are now better options through the regular jewel mod pool. This also means that other desirable corruption modifiers, like immunity to corruption blood, are more likely to roll. We want the moment of finding a unique jewel to be way more exciting than it currently is. We've added a handful of new, very powerful unique jewels and have removed some old, less interesting ones. An example of one of these new unique jewels is Fire Sword, which propagates any modifiers to your ignite mitigation to other elemental ailments. If you're able to substantially reduce the duration of a Ignite Sword, then you can use Fire Sword to basically shrug off any elemental ailment. For full information about the other changes to unique jewels, check out the balance manifesto post we made recently. We've rebalanced curses to make them stronger where they matter most against unique monsters and pinnacle bosses. We have buffed several hex-related unique items and reworked unique items that previously unplayed. To replace the Doomsday Keystone missive, we've brought back a version of an iconic curse-related keystone from the past. We've introduced some powerful new unique items that interact with hexes, which we'll reveal in the lead-up to launch. For more details on changes to curses, check out the balance manifesto we posted or the patch notes that will come out after the live stream concludes. When we first created the Arch-Nemesis monster mod system, our goal was to improve Path of Exile's outdated set of monster mods with new and interesting mechanics that have modern game balance. We feel that Arch-Nemesis did introduce a lot of interesting mechanics, but it unfortunately had several of its own problems. We have replaced Arch-Nemesis with a system that is more similar to the way monster mods worked in the past. The new monster mods are simpler. They now each do one thing and very clearly state what they do. Each encounter with a rare monster is now less complex and is easier to understand in the heat of combat compared to Arch-Nemesis.
Miért vették ki a színeket belőle?
Igazából ugyanaz lesz, mint régen, nem?
Igen, ugyanaz lesz, csak más modok. Tök idegesítő így.
The goal is that combat is interesting and varied, with moments that get your heart racing.
Akkor igazából nem tűnik az Arch-Nemesis, csak nem neve lesz, hanem oda van írva, hogy mit csinál.
Let's talk about rewards. Under Arch-Nemesis, it often felt mandatory to bring in a magic find culling character to kill some monsters for you in order to maximize your rewards. In the new system, we've added a significant pool of new rewards to rares, but the reward that is on the monster is hidden and not associated with a specific mod, so you don't know what kind of rewards you will get until you kill the monster. Rare monsters with more mods are more likely to have these special hidden reward bonuses. To find out more about other balance changes that are taking place in the Forbidden Sanctum, check out the patch notes which will be available when the livestream ends. Over the last year or so, some of our senior developers have been tinkering with a more challenging way to play Path of Exile. We've been publicly alpha testing this mode, known as Ruthless, for the last month, and are planning to make it available to anyone who's interested, alongside Ruthless is an optional additional character flag, like Hardcore or Solo Self-Found, that completely changes how Path of Exile feels to play. Ruthless is a lot more difficult than regular Path of Exile, but it doesn't achieve this by making the monsters harder to kill. It instead focuses on reducing character power through extreme item scarcity, limited crafting, and many other changes such as support gems being dropped over. We've posted an article about the philosophy and rules of Ruthless on pathofexile.com/ruthless. We plan to release this mode alongside the Forbidden Sanctum expansion in a week.
In addition to being a character flag like hardcore or solo
Most ezekkel csajozni
it's
nem,
also
SSF
available as a
Ruthless
modifier
HC.
for private leagues.
Oh,
To be clear, the Forbidden Sanctum League content can be played in Ruthless with appropriately balanced rewards. Ruthless is still very experimental during 320, and we won't be afraid to make mid-league balance changes to it during this experimental phase. Ruthless is not for everyone, but so far it has found a supportive and growing group of players who enjoy the additional challenge that it brings. If it sounds like something you're interested in, try it out next time you're looking for a new way to enjoy Path of Exile. This expansion also contains a number of small quality of life improvements. Some examples are Divine Vessels can now be used by right-clicking them rather than taking them to Sin. On the player overhead life bar, the energy shield bar is split into a separate bar. You can now right-click an itemized temple of the to see its layout. And most importantly, these crafting recipes that add mods to flasks now actually say what the mods do. We'll post more information about these and other quality of life improvements in the later release. Today we're launching 2 new series of supporter packs, the Forge and Gemling packs. Each tier contains the pack's full face value and points, plus several exclusive microtransactions. These packs will only be available for the duration of the Sanctum Challenge League and will leave the store forever in 3 months. As always, these microtransactions are entirely cosmetic and do not affect your character's progression or power. The Forge series of supporter packs contains 6 exclusive microtransactions.
Tudsz blacksmithing?
The clockwork back attachment ramps up and
gyere ide, kovácsolok nekem.
releasing it when your streak ends.
Bazdmeg ez a sweep milyen OP. Az igen, kiengeded a pár öngőzt.
The Delirious hideout decoration lets you summon delirium fog in your hideout at will, complete with strange voices and terrifying apparitions.
Be lehet gőzölni a hideoutot is.
Kikapcsolta be a delirium kötet a hideoutomba.
Jézusom, jönnek a démonok is.
The Forge Guard armor set summons a hammer and anvil so that everyone nearby can watch you craft.
Az geci!
Az úgy vicces. És akkor 10 000 két.
The ethereal fusing effect turns your item linking attempts into a spectator sport. If you manage to hit a 6 link, people watching are even prompted to send a congratulatory
lesznek ilyen legendák, hogy
Jaja, nem azt fogják írni, hogy fuck you.
Lesz ilyen ember, aki ott áll ki
de ez amúgy menő, geci.
Ott áll ki, és
Kurva kár, hogy ez így nem alap feature.
Snaliszki 6. hatlinkje, gyertek már oda, mindenki nézze, hogy linkelik, adod neki
gondoljátok, most milyen jó lesz, mikor majd kiveszik a fusingokat a játékból.
The High Templar weapon effect smites the undead you fight and scours the souls of those you put to rest.
Tízes
The
azért, hogy
Gemling
kevesebb
pack
legyen
series
az
also has
FPS-en.
6 exclusive
Azt nézd,
microtransactions.
Perandusz!
The Hive weapon effect lets your weapon play host to a swarm of angry bees, which erupt from the hive whenever you hit an enemy with the weapon. Critical hits cause the hive to send out its best warriors.
No ne, mélyes mézes.
Quicksilver Flask makes you the leader of your own personal rower herd. Activating the flask causes a host of ghostly rowers to charge alongside you.
Amikor benyomod a prankot haverodra, és akkor
tényleg a gemeket berakod a tesedbe.
Ez jól néz ki.
Crafting gems with gem cutters prisms, Val orbs, or regrading lenses visualizes the process for all to see. This armor set also includes ultimate gem level up effects.
Akik nézik.
Prospero's ring blesses you with a constant shower of coins, and it helps you thank players you've traded with through a hearty fist bump. A consuming ooze pet bounces alongside you and devours corpses in your wake, spitting out a tidy pile of bones. Finally, this pack allows you to reunite with Zero Corandus, inviting him to your hideout as a vendor. In addition to buying items from you and using his connections to accept your divination cards, he'll provide commentary on your goods, equipment, and anything else he sees fit to judge you for.
That might be a little too much to drink, even for me.
Kadira has hundreds of lines of voice acting.
What? Oh, a mighty headhunter. I'm so impressed. Try to duck when the brain fragments splatter everywhere. You wouldn't want to sully your armor.
These new packs are available right now at pathofexile.com/purchase. Purchases like these directly fund the ongoing development of Path of Exile 1 and 2, and we really appreciate your support. Meanwhile, the Knight and Rogue packs leave the store forever in 1 week, so now's your last chance to purchase them. The Calandra edition of Kirik's Vault Pass is only available until the end of the Calandra League, and will be replaced with a new set of unique items when the Forbidden Sanctum launches. By the way, we're hoping to film Season 11 of Build of the Week once the Forbidden Sanctum comes out. If you want to submit your build for the season, share your build guide on the class forums on pathofexile.com.
Share your build guide.
Next up, we'll have a Q&A with Ziggy D. Once that ends, we'll post the full patch notes for the Forbidden Sanctum. Over the next week, our community team will post the expansion's challenge rewards, information on how to update your item filters, all new and changed gems, and information on how to prepare for launch. On launch weekend, we expect to release the new mystery box, and we'll follow up with the new Kirik's Vault Pass on the days after launch. Thanks for joining us and checking out the Forbidden Sanctum. We can't wait to join you in Rayclast on December 9th. We'll begin the Q&A shortly, so please get your questions ready in chat.
Mutatja a linkelés, az geci menő. Kár, hogy ki fogják venni.
Ja,
átdolgozni át tudják mással.
El tudod képzelni azt, hogy ketten bementek mondjuk Schaefertől, elkezd az 6 linken, és ott a congratulation gomb, és nem tudsz félre komputani. Megköszönöd neki, és lesz lebbel a faszba.
Hát persze, $90 ilyen lehet Kadiró amúgy, tehát egyértelmű.
Nekem nagyon tetszik egyébként a liga.
Ez a legjobb liga a basszájba.
Ne csináld már amúgy, de komolyan. Szerintem kurva jó amúgy. Ebben szerintem nem tudom, ez így van benne idő, nem elég klánki szar, és így tök érdemes csinálni.
A liga jól néz ki.
Lehet a push, nem? AC push.
Nem lehet rákattintani, hogy megnézni a... Nem lehet annoncizva?
Good morning, Exiles, and welcome back for another Q&A session with none other than Chris Wilson. Good morning, Chris. Thank you for joining us once again.
Oh, thanks for being here as well.
I'm very keen to jump into chatting about Forbidden Sanctum straight away, but as always, you folks can put your questions in the chat, and our helpful team of moderators will pull some out for us to answer. So, Path of Exile gets to be so many things. It has gotten to be so many things over the years. Do you ever really feel like you just don't need to make another game in any other genre because you can just make a league that is that genre? Like make a farming league, or a city building league, or a roguelike league?
I guess that's one perk of the job. We always try to make sure that when we're designing our leagues, they're games that fit within the idea of being an action RPG. Like they have to involve you killing monsters and finding items in order to fit within Path of Exile.
Yeah, so even when you're farming,
most azért azt nézd már meg, hogy tök jó tematikája van ennek a Forge Master setnek, és megnézed a másikat, amiben benne van Kadir, tehát $30 kaphatsz méheket, hogyha megütöd a mobokat, meg a roákat megidézheted Quicksilverrel, random shitek, megkapod Kadirot
az internet dolgoztak.
Megkapod Kadirot és ragacskát $90.
How do you gain access to the new Forbidden Sanctum?
So basically every area you're playing in has a portal that gives you access to it. It basically takes you to the next room that you're playing in the Sanctum.
Okay, so to clarify then, the Sanctum's divided into rooms, each with their own encounter, and then floors with a boss at the end of each. And then there's the whole Sanctum itself, which is multiple floors?
That's right. So the Sanctum itself has 4 floors, each one guarded by a boss at the end, with the ultimate boss fight at the end of the 4th floor. And each of the floors has 8 rooms, and so a maximum length Sanctum run would be 32 consecutive rooms, which would over potentially 32 maps. But it's worth emphasizing that, as with most roguelikes, you don't just, install it and then happily play through to the end of one go. It's something you do further and further with each run, as you get better meta progression, as you learn more about it, and as you have good versus bad runs.
I presume it level scales to the character kind of as you're leveling still, as per regular leagues. Is there any potential, do you think, that someone who's quite good at the game maybe gets through on their first try, or is this quite definitely you're gonna have to make it a bit further?
We never underestimate players, right? Like we will try as hard as we can to achieve something, and then players will just blow right past that because there are millions of them and they're pretty damn good at the game. So I don't want to make any promises there, but it certainly is the case that in order to get really deep into the Sanctum, you have to know a lot about it, you have to have some experience with it, you have to ideally have a good character with a capable build, you ideally have a good setup of your relics, which are the meta progression to get to the deeper floors. It certainly requires that you've assembled relics to your strategy, and it also helps to be having a good run. I can't emphasize that enough. It's very roguelike, where you're picking up these random boons, these random afflictions, and if you get the bad afflictions on you early on, that run is not going to last long. If you get a really good set of boons, you can have a really deep run, much further than you otherwise would at your current level.
A fehér gemeket is látod a gemes armorban, mert 6 portál gemet, akkor mi történik?
Even building the temple was around 11 maps to build a full temple and then run that. That was like pretty sizable thing. This is a lot bigger than that.
That's correct, but a lot of the rewards you're getting along the way, and so it's entirely fine to play the Sanctum a few floors in and then fail and play again, and it's still a rewarding experience, assuming you don't gamble on pushing the rewards right to the end of the entire Sanctum run, but it's unlikely you're going to choose to do that until you are really confident in your ability to do this run.
Yeah, so I saw the reward options to like take a tiny reward now, take a decent reward at the end of the floor, so you're like, oh, I can make it 3 or 4 rooms. And then there's the really big one at the end as well. Oh. And there's stack right if you get a bunch of them.
That's right, and it was kind of funny because in the live stream I said this is a massive reward and we're showing like a few chaos swords as the reward, so of course, chat memed that as much as they could. The thing is, okay, so let's do some math here, right? It's 32 rooms in the Sanctum run, and deferrals make up something like 40%. So deferral is what I'm internally calling the offer reward. It makes up around 40% of the rooms. So if you're offered an average of a whole bunch of Chaos Orbs, I think the example there had like 18, but obviously the currency and those will vary a lot. Then, and you were to defer those entirely to the end of the Sanctum run, you would be using hundreds of currency, and it can have divine mirrors and various other stuff in there, moderately, so it's entirely possible that were you to defer everything to the end and then gamble, receive a very, very large payout. Now, of course, deferring it to the end of the Sanctum is a crazy strategy. We don't recommend that. It will only do this if you're confident in this run. It's set up so that the rewards for immediately taking them are still worthwhile. If you played the Sanctum and just took the reward immediately, it's a decent amount of currency that makes it worthwhile on top of the other rewards you're getting. But there's always the temptation of the end of the floor. The floor one is the one that's juiced. Of course, in later floors, the end of the Sanctum doesn't go very far away, and if you know you're having a good run, you've got confidence, then why not take the extra reward?
This
deferral mechanic super interesting actually, because you've designed leagues where you get like some reward immediately, and then you've designed leagues where you do like a lot of content and then get a ton of rewards at once. This allows players to have control over that mechanic and make that decision themselves. And I feel like kind of...
I was just going to say, this is because roguelikes have good runs and bad runs. If you're having a bad run, take the rewards now as far as you can. If you're having a great run, that gives you the ability to make an ultimatum like gamble.
Yeah, right. You can make those strategic decisions kind of based on like, this has been a brutal slog. I'm no way am I getting through this. Check out that. Makes sense. Have you thought about like the player mindset? Just like, I always gonna take the big one, because I look at it and I'm like, I'm always going to take the one, and I'm the biggest one, I'm never going to get it, because I'm always going to die.
Obviously, players want to mimic stuff. They want to get the best result. The best result may pragmatically say, I'm going to take this reward that's in a shorter time frame. Plus, okay, so anyone who's done economics or finance understands the concept of the time value of money. $1 now is worth more than $1 later, so you can put it to use right now. And when these full Sanctum runs taking 30 maps, maybe getting a pile of Chaoses, potentially some higher currency like Exalts and Divines, a few maps from now is actually better for development than getting a very large pile of especially when there's a conditional element to that. And maybe getting something a few maps from now that you can then trade to get more progression is actually better for you. So there are a lot of hard decisions which we put on the table here for the players.
Yeah, I'm going to have to dig out my old economics textbooks.
Amúgy nem tudom, azt mondták, hogy root lesz milyen low effort, ahhoz képest minden ligát full rá kell balanszolni. Igen, oké.
For the Forbidden Sanctum specifically, and when your resolve runs out, you're kicked out of the Sanctum dead on.
Akkor valószínűleg lesz amúgy.
That's correct. Now, I noticed the reaction when we're announcing the resolve system there, as a lot of players said, why, as though this is a negative thing, but I want to have a chance to explain it. So we tried very hard to work out a system here that works with your player life.
Ezt most rakják be bármi, csak azért kérdezem.
The problem is though, half of Exile's player life fluctuates up and down graphically. You're constantly healing yourself, you've got recovery, there's no persistence to this. Your player life is like part of who you are. It's a very brief, it's almost like your heartbeat to some extent. And so if we were to say, look, if you lose some life in this room, then when you come back into the next room, that life is going to be missing, so you've got a kind of a progression through the Sanctum, then they just press one and heal themselves fully and carry on playing. And so our experiments where there's no meta progression in it do not function as a roguelike. That has to be a thing that you get worn down. Having said that, half of the plan here, half of the strategy you have to do in your Sanctum is work out how you are recovering your resolve, and there are lots of different ways. So along the lines, I mean, it's as simple as if your resolve is lower than you'd like because the Sanctum runs when you're struggling with, then you have to start pathing through various things like fountains or getting choosing boons which enable more resolve recovery. And every time you have to choose something focusing on resolve recovery, you're implicitly losing some other thing you could be getting, like more rewards or a different axis of power. And so the degree to which you're struggling with the run forces you to focus on staying alive and not getting rewards. But conversely, this means if you're having a good run where you are not struggling at all, you can just kind of ignore your resolve and focus on becoming super powerful. And this works really well as a roguelike, and I would really encourage people to try it out before judging it based on the fact that it's an additional life bar. We don't add those kind of things, for no reason. And it means as well that you don't have as much pressure on your actual player life. And it's very interesting how build agnostic this is, because it creates a situation where different Path of Exile players can experience the Sanctum in similar ways, despite the fact that builds play
This was Q&A is super good to do, because you get a chance to explain this, like how you arrived at this design decision that you can't really do in the reveal, because it would bog down the reveal for like 10 minutes. So that's super interesting. You actually touched on a topic I wanted to ask. So Resolve seems to reward high mobility playstyles that can completely avoid attacks. So since mitigation doesn't affect resolve damage, how does it feel playing like a low mobility tanky melee character in the Sanctum when you kind of just be failing runs due to chip damage that otherwise is not a threat to you?
We thought of that. So we've made it so that the resolve damage is lower if you're close to a target. Essentially, if you're melee and you're right in their face, then you take less resolve damage than if you're further away. And so attacks are also very telegraphed, and that means that even if you're a tanky melee character, you have an opportunity to get out of the way. You probably should consider at least a Quicksilver Flask if you're going into the Sanctum, so that you have some ability to respond to stuff, but that's normal Path of Exile play. Even in Ruthless, where there's significantly less mobility skills, Quicksilver Flasks still exist. The other thing is, if your build is one where you're expecting to take a lot of resolve damage, just spec your relics into resolve recovery. Relics are your meta progression that you can choose, they're locked in for the Sanctum run, and you keep them between runs. So if you feel that you want more resolve recovery, get relics that do that. And if you're a character that's given up mobility, has mobility at the expense of maybe less damage or less tankiness or something, then there are other things they can specialize their relics into if they have enough resolve.
That taking less damage at close range is super interesting. Is that like kind of a fast shot mechanic applied to special attacks or something?
It's like that for all of the resolve stuff, and this is something that we've realized is necessary because the melee and tanky characters get up close, and so it's better for that to be balanced around.
Alright, cool. And just to clarify for people, if you are playing hardcore, this means you can fail the Sanctum without dying. So
úgy lehet vasságot találni, de szerintem nekem van
igazam, de the intention of the Forbidden Sanctum is that you will fail your Sanctum many, many times on the path to finding all of the good stuff in it. And so if that meant the hardcore character was dead and had to start again, it just wouldn't be a hardcore compatible league. So the side effect of Resolve is that hardcore characters can actually engage with it without putting themselves in mortal danger. It also means, of course, the way that experience penalties work, high-level characters can play without putting their current experience so much on the line. I mean, it's still very... I mean, I've died in the Sanctum numerous occasions with legitimate player life deaths because I was careless, but it's certainly easier from a player life point of view than, say, high-level mapping is.
But that kind of speaks to the concept of Resolve as a whole. Resolve is about how well you've done over the course of the entire dungeon, whereas your health is how well you've done in this specific engagement.
Ezt a fracturing dolgot így
kind of like two-faceted approach. Like if you do bad at the start of the map, it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect the rest of the map, right?
Yeah, and it's also meant that if we want something to be dangerous, we up the resolve a bit, we don't up its damage, threatening the actual characters.
Hoppá, még a Vulcanic Fisher 60% fiszkol, még a Projectiles deal 50% less damage with hits and ailments.
Where the effects work on your character outside of the
Sanctum.
That's correct, yeah, both inside and outside. So these are permanent power progression for characters. They're hard to get, they're very endgame, we're talking late maps here.
Hát igen, és nem akartad tudni mindig csinálni, szóval azt valószínűleg ott hagyták, de az mondjuk nagyon-nagyon szerelmes volt sajnos. Experimental balance, Witch Bane, when you kill an enemy affected by non-aura hex, become immune to curses for the remaining of the hex duration.
We've made sure to juice them also relics, which will significantly affect the character of your build. Now, They are shared among all the characters on your account, or meaning from the same pool. So it does mean that if you find one for one character and you want to use it on a different build, it's entirely possible to.
Meg lehet a dropsy. Give me the dropsy.
Very cool. How does the Sanctum work in a party?
Ja, Continál szereztem meg.
Okay.
Akkor megszereztem.
Got a bunch of rules here. Short answer is, as with all recent leagues, we want party play to work, but we also want it so that people don't feel encouraged to cheese things through party play. And so the philosophy basically is, like, one of the problems with Arch Nemesis with the whole culling situation is that players realize when they find a certain monster that, oh, I now have to engage with other humans in order to get maximum result here. We want Sanctum to work in a party without creating the feeling that you have to engage with humans in order to get the best out of your Sanctum. It shouldn't feel like you only want to go in there when you have a whole bunch of friends who are online at the same time. So we've come up with rules that enable you to play as a party, and certainly there are some benefits to doing so, but there is also some liabilities with it. And so the way it works is the Sanctum is always that of the map owner. The person who created the map is the one whose Sanctum you are playing. So if Ziggy and I are playing and we're doing Ziggy's Sanctum, he's the one getting the progress for that. I'm there to help, and afterwards it would be nice if he reciprocated and we did my Sanctum as well, but it's primarily your one that's progressing. And so this means that you are the one who makes the choices about stuff. This is the one, it's your relics matter there. We're using your gold, your boons, your afflictions, and your resolve bar. That's the important thing to note. If you invite other party members into your Sanctum with you, they don't just get a free ability to have their own resolve bar, which doesn't matter, or they can run around and distract the monsters. You are, as a party, sharing the resolve bar with the map owner. And this means that extra party members can't just go and suicide themselves on stuff to distract the monsters. They actually have to be playing properly. Party member deaths do not end the current run, so if they happen to die legitimately, that doesn't screw up what you're doing. There's a bunch of other small rules there, like party members can view the merchant and view the map, but only the map owner actually makes the choices and purchases stuff. In practice, what this means is it's fun to bring people in and play together. It does give you a small advantage from a combat point of view if you have multiple players, but you do all have to be playing cohesively, so only bring in party members you trust. You can also drop party members in and out, so by that I mean, like, I can play this room with Ziggy and the next one with someone else, and because it's sharing my resources, that's compatible without having to have like a party resolve bar that's reserved for a specific group of people.
Alright, so if I bring a viewer in and they want to sabotage me, they can run in front of all the monsters.
Yep.
Great.
That would be hilarious. You guys should do
that. Please. Okay, we got a couple of chat questions on the mechanics here specifically as well. Also, I just wanted to add another one. When you die in the Sanctum via resolve death, and your character flops on the ground like a fish, are you fully protected from taking any damage from any source of dots, anything like that? You guys have checked, right?
This fucking guy.
Yes. I checked this yesterday.
Elvileg, hogyha elfér van, akkor semmitől nem halsz.
Like, I'll read it to you. Cannot be damaged. Minions take no actions. You have grace period. Dealt no damage. Minions have no damage. Minions cannot be damaged. There's a whole bunch of stuff.
Good. Okay, cool. Excellent. Just had to make 100% sure. We didn't want any people like, I fell over in the Sanctum and then I died when I couldn't control my character. So, good. Excellent. Losing a resolve death. TK asks, is your XP lost or is your XP protected?
My belief is that so that was the dev check. You don't lose experience if you fail out through to resolve, and that's because it isn't actually a death. It doesn't increase the deaths count. You don't lose experience. You don't lose hardcore characters. It's entirely basically fainting and being ejected.
Gotcha. Malik asks, do we need to interact with the league mechanic every zone, or can we somehow build them up or save them to run them all at once?
You do interact with it in every zone, and it's not a particularly long encounter. These aren't very large rooms, but yes, you should interact with every zone.
Yeah, sometimes you literally you would probably just portal in and click a fountain and leave, right? And then go back to your map?
The structure is that every room, so the basic way it works is you take the portal and you appear in a small antechamber, which enables you to make a choice. You click on the map, have a look at what the options are of where you want to go next. You can look a few ahead and you lock in a choice. And then a door, one of the 3 doors, or up to 3 doors in that room slides open. So you go through. Now you're in the actual main Sanctum room. So you do whatever the objective is in there, which may be just getting to the exit or killing the guards or whatever. And this is not designed to take long. It's meant to not interrupt your mapping from a pace point of view. And then you end up in the reward room. Every room has a reward. And these vary from all the things we've talked about.
fountains, affliction fountains, merchant, treasure room, and so on, or the offer one, which is the item deferral, and a whole bunch of other. I should add, there are a lot of other reward rooms we haven't shown in the live stream. Like the goal here is players explore and find stuff, so we only showed a subset in the announcement. And so after you've done that, you're right back into the map you were playing. And so it's a relatively quick process and does improve your Sanctum progress or give you some actual currency with each room you play.
Yeah, for some behind the scenes insight here, for this one we were specifically like, let's try and avoid spoilers as much as possible for like the things you can discover in the Forbidden Sanctum. So there's a bit of discovery process there.
There's a lot of discovery and there's quite a lot of story as well. Like there's an actual reason why the Sanctum is, got this bad person in there and what's going on with that. But we'd much prefer people actually enjoy that rather than us dumping it all on them here.
And bosses too, I'm very excited.
Yeah, lots of boss fights.
Ooh, lots. I was thinking they might just be like 2 or something. Very good. Official Arrow asks, do totems, when they take damage, lose your resolve? And I'll tack onto that minions as well.
No, they do not.
Na tessék, totembe ide ez
Excellent. Does self-inflicted damage affect resolve?
I don't think it does. There's a lot of shrugging. No. It's only damage that's tagged with affecting your resolve. There are some, let's say, environmental hazards in the Sanctum. You can see it briefly in some of the footage of some big molten orbs flying around and so on, and that kind of thing. An object in the middle of the room that's spewing out laser beams that rotates, for example, that stuff will hurt your resolve. But it's really telegraphed. It's very easy for people to deal with.
No. Well, there you go. That answers Mokidota's question as well. So we'll move on to the next topic, which is endgame changes. So the need to swap between bossing and mapping in the Atlas trees was definitely something that felt awkward. So I'm pretty excited to learn a bit more about that change. Many of the nodes have been rolled into the game as default now for bossing. But are there any passives that remain on the Atlas tree for bossing reward stuff? I'm guessing there are still nodes, for example, to enable the Uber versions of the various bosses.
Yes, there are Uber nodes still. So if you want to play the Uber fights, you can allocate the passive. But thankfully, that's a very small investment that you wouldn't do particularly often. And the main problem, which is where you feel like you have to fully spec into bosses and then fully unspec back into mapping, which is a large investment, is not there anymore. And it's worth noting the kind of people that are doing Uber pinnacle farming can afford the regrets to flick a passive on and off from time to time. But basically, the plan is that you can play bosses at any time without feeling like you have to respec your tree or you're missing out on something.
I mean, it's also important to note that the Ubers are not the default bosses now, thankfully. Very good. Some of the allocatable boss nodes made things more challenging in addition to more rewarding. So, for example, Inevitable Ambush, which added a second Guardian to the Guardian fights. Are things like this made default behavior now, or are they still passives, or are they just gone?
The ones that add extra challenge and rewards are gone for now, but this isn't a we don't like them, they're gone forever. It's a case that we want to bring them back in some form. And we have some plans for this. They probably won't be an at 320 release, but we do have some cool ways where basically the ability to opt in to the challenge and reward is not going to come from the tree because that creates the problems we've discussed, but it will come from somewhere. And so players will be able to get their challenge and reward back for those. But in the meantime, obviously, there's still a lot of ways you can ramp up the juice and challenge from these encounters.
Jack was wondering if Atlas Tree will be viewable today alongside patch notes, or is that a little bit later maybe?
I don't think it's today, but our expectation is to release it before release so that you do get a chance to plan around it.
Okay. Reign of Pain Games asks, there was mention of boss nodes being moved from the Atlas passive tree to the bosses directly. To avoid what happened last league with loot, are there any number changes happening with the modifiers?
I'm unaware of any. I mean, we've tried very hard to communicate everything as clearly as we can in the patch notes. I mean, I can't promise we haven't missed anything, but we have scoured stuff in order to try to make sure it's complete, and also written the live stream and our information are based on this kind of stuff. So we are trying very hard to disclose any small changes like that which would have an impact. I'm not aware of any stuff we haven't spoken about there.
All right, let's talk a bit about Rare Monsters. I think a lot of players are very happy to read the manifesto about the replacement of the Arch Nemesis system for Rare Monsters with a new, more, I guess, Nemesis-like system. Do you think that this new system will still achieve the goals that you set out to achieve with Arch Nemesis, though?
So the goal of Arch Nemesis initially was modernization of the effects and their balance. We felt that the old monster mods were just really old. We just basically needed to give them a fresh coat of paint. Now, our fresh coat of paint included some stuff that players didn't like, and so we're trying very hard to make sure the new system does achieve the core goals of Arch Nemesis without having the things that people didn't like. And so to that effect, it now does use
modern effects. There's a lot of cool stuff that we weren't doing with a system that was 2 systems ago, and the balance is appropriate for current Path of Exile. So it's definitely ticked those boxes, but at the same time, it's trying to be much more understandable and simple and a bit less in your face than Arch Nemesis was.
On a very kind of just like rough feelings basis, how do you think like an old Arch Nemesis compares to a new rare monster on average?
My impression so far is that the monsters are on average a bit easier, but the key thing is this. A previous Arch Nemesis mod had a grab bag of stuff that it did. It generally made the monster do more damage in a generic sense. It also had an interesting thing that happened gameplay-wise, and it added a bunch of defensive properties, and often on multiple axes. And so it cohesively had a kind of a, this is a fire, it's going to screw you up with fire in 4 different ways kind of theme. And so therefore it applied to pretty much any character, right? It would have some way of interacting with them. The new mods are very simple. The new mods say, cool, you're not going to be able to do much fire damage to me, or I'm going to do a lot of fire damage to you, or I have a magma barrier. They just do one thing. And therefore, they're very, let's just say, Boolean against certain players. I'll give an example. Let's say you run into a rare monster with 2 mods, and those 2 mods are that it will blind you and that it's resistant to fire damage. So if you're playing a cold caster, neither of those mods affects you whatsoever. They're literally nothing. And so you can kill a monster easily and it doesn't do anything extra to you. Great. And on average, you're often encountering this. But if you're playing a fire melee character, it blinds you, which is going to affect your accuracy, and the fire damage is going to be mitigated against it. This will be a harder fight. It will wake you up a bit when you encounter it. And so you're going to find this situation where a lot more monsters are just speed bumps along the way and aren't causing a problem, and sometimes there'll be one which causes you issues because of your build. And so it's quite a different experience for different players, but overall, the monsters are at a glance much simpler in terms of what they do, and you're not encountering the onerous, long, frustrating fights every single area like you were before.
See, I like that because you feel good when you're playing a build and you run into a challenge where you're like, my build doesn't care about this at all. You feel clever, even though it's just kind of the luck of the draw on that one, but yeah, that feels good. So on the modifiers, only doing what they say, fantastic. However, there still kind of remains a problem where this information is in a small text list at the top of the screen. Have you guys explored the idea of color coding the new modifiers in some way to help players identify them? Or maybe using other systems like, I don't know, little symbols or maybe like color-coded glows on monsters to denote certain effects and so on?
They do have visual effects on them in many cases, so you often can see what a monster does based on what it looks like. But otherwise, what we focused on here is to succinctly and completely describe what the monster does in text. And this is a list that has more words than Arch Nemesis, because Arch Nemesis would have something like Flamewalker, and then what does that mean? Who knows? You'd learn, of course, but there were 70 plus of them. Oh, yeah. And so now it specifically says what it does. This may mean more reading. It may not be a good endpoint here, right? It might be that we need to make the things slightly more concise, but I'm really worried about us getting back into keywording, because part of the problem with keywording was then a player can't look at the keyword and actually understand what it does. So I don't know. Longer term, there are probably solutions here. Maybe the right answer is to put some color coding back. Currently, it's not color coded. That was something which went with the keywords in Arch Nemesis. I mean, it could be restored, but we'd like people to play and give us some feedback. If you guys can suggest how the mods can be made further clear, so that you can easily identify them while you're playing, that's really useful. Have a go. We're open to feedback here. We want to make sure the monster mod system achieves our goals and is still easy to read.
Yeah, I think the color coding would be a good thing. It could be something that could be done gradually over time as well. Like you start with elementally aligned things that are color-coded alongside their elements.
One thing we have done, and this isn't something we spoke about on the live stream, is that the text under the monsters that says like resist fire, resist cold, or vulnerable to fire, vulnerable to cold, the one that kicks in when they have approximately 15% resistance. Spammy alongside all these mods. Like when we're asking you to read 2 or 3 short lines of mod text, having like resist fire, resist cold underneath it as well was quite a lot. And so we've moved those to little symbols over on the right of the life bar. And so if you're the kind of character who cares about which monsters are fire resistant, you're just glancing at symbols now rather than trying to read text. And that's helpful.
3 sor helyett csak lehetne egy keyword, és akkor egy mod, és akkor betulásan az is.
De most mondták azt, hogy keyword nem jó. Mert nem tudod, hogy mi történik.
So let's look at the loot goblin issue. It seems like it'll be solved by players simply just not knowing which monster is going to be the big loot pinata.
Let's get down the business.
But how do you feel about the loot conversion system overall? Because I thought this system was quite interesting, but maybe a little bit how it was implemented. For the unfamiliar, the loot conversion system is this new system that takes what a monster would usually drop and converts it into a new type of reward, like all currency, for example.
So we've reviewed the loot conversions and added some new ones, dropped some old ones, like the ones that just gave you piles and piles of flasks, for example, as far as I know.
Audionak üzenem, hogy nagyon pogáliga, és egyszer sem mondtam semmi
rosszat. Vagy milyen, nem is Silver, bocs, Diamond.
So the way it works is rare monsters drop more items than regular monsters. By itself, that should be enough reward, but we want it to be interesting, and we want people to feel like they're really, that there's an extra reason to kill rare monsters, because you could otherwise ignore them. And so you basically have these bonus drops that can occur, and bonus drops include conversions, but they also include a lot of other stuff. And there's a chance of getting the bonus drops that's proportional to the mods that are on the monster. For example, if a monster has 2 mods on it, then it has 2 chances to get a bonus. If it has 4 mods, it has 4 chances to get a bonus. And the individual mods have higher chances, where I believe, like, the more difficult ones, like, for example, if there's one that's similar to one of the old Pantheon mods, and that it does, like, it evokes some, god who comes and smites you, for example, then it is significantly higher. There's a significantly higher chance that it's going to have a special drop here. And what you find is when a monster has conversions of all the really big mods in it, it's a hard fight, that results in there being a very high chance of one of these special drops, which is potentially a conversion, or potentially one of the other ones we haven't spoken about yet. And this results in a thing where you have a lot of incentive to fight rare monsters, a lot of incentive to fight hard rare monsters, but you don't feel that you can assess a monster beforehand and then try to min-max what your exact party composition should be in order to get the maximum rewards from that fight. We've also tried to smooth this out a bit more. Like, the thing in the past where you could potentially, under the right circumstances, get dozens and dozens of divines from a monster, and then everyone else feels like they're getting nothing, wasn't great. So we're trying to make sure that there are still spikes, but it's a bit less spiky than before. There's a bit more spread across all of the different things, and a lot of the bad options are a bit better now.
A lot more variety too, it sounds like. Is this something you've considered doing to map bosses as well? Like, map bosses have definitely gotten better over time in terms of reward and more interesting, which I like. But it still seems like, in a lot of cases, they could get a little spicier.
Yeah, it's worth looking into. Yeah, we've been focusing this cycle on trying to get the monster mods into a good place and to scrub all the arch nemesis off everything.
Yes. Oh, feels good.
Az a stand-up-kól van az agyam, hogy nerfelték a Starforge-ot, most visszabukkolták, amiről nerfelték.
Get my gurney out and hose off the arch nemesis filth.
Hát ja, te kellett szerintem, hadd csinálja.
Definitely threw me there. A lot of people in chat asked, how will Headhunter work with the new monster mods?
Okay, this is the first question we were expecting.
There
are way more mods now, and that means Headhunter players that are getting a lot of mods cap out later. Previously, because there were relatively few Nemesis mods. I mean, there were still dozens, to be fair, but there were fewer. Once you've got them all active, you can't get more. Whereas here there are far more mods, and so you can have far more upper end. Having said that, these do less than the Arch Nemesis mods, because that's what you asked us to do. And so they do implicitly, at the low end, Headhunter is less powerful. At the high end, Headhunter is more powerful.
Mindig azt mondják azt, hogy a unique itemek azok soha nem használ senki. Persze azért, mert oké, felbuffolták, de érted, hogy egy nem tudom, mondjuk 2 darab T1-es fizmod, és már ott tartom, hogy az egész. Ahol van.
Nem csak egyszer régen meg azt mondta a koposz, hogy hát a legjobb fegyvereket azokat craftolni kell, mert azt szeretnék, hogyha lecraftolnák őket.
Én ezt föl nem értem amúgy. Miért baj az, hogy...
I'm pretty sure the first conversion is gone. That and the like piles of whetstones ones.
Azt nem tudom, hogy jól néz ki a liga mechanika, csak mennyire lesz szar, hogy naponként tolhatsz egy szobát.
Okay. Simple Cookie asks, will the Atlas passive that includes mods like Rare Monsters be added back to new Rare Monster changes?
Oh, I'm back again.
I don't think it has been. Do you know that? Yeah. I mean, we certainly discussed it, but we want to kind of get a vanilla experience here of how many Rare Monster mods is appropriate, and an issue with feedback is if there are ways to juice it up, and people say there are too many mods, we don't know if they necessarily have them active, so we'll consider it for the future, but this has been a year of Rare Monster mods, so let's just try this new system and see if people appreciate the changes, and then we can look at further changes to it.
It's been a wild ride, Chris. All right. So recently you swapped kind of Divine and Exalted Orbs around. Now that we've had a league with the various changes surrounding these high-end currencies, I'd like to know, what were the goals of effectively swapping Divines and Exalts, and how effective have the changes been?
Well, the goals were that Exalts were used more for crafting, that someone would actually consider taking an item and using an Exalted Orb to get another mod that is random. That's happening now.
Persze, mind a 5 ember.
Secondly, we wanted it to be harder to divine items, not just because we're mean, but because it makes well-rolled uniques more valuable. Previously, because divines were really accessible, or relatively accessible, it meant if you have a really rolled unique, it didn't really feel that special because someone can summon two divines into it to get something like that. Now there is quite a wide variance of stuff. Like, look at something like Brassstone, for example, where the worst versions of it are worth quite a lot less than the really good ones. And that's more fun, because then you find something that's just a much better version of something that someone else has.
Most kell ilyen 4-4 liga, amire visszabalanszolják ugye ezt a
These goals were achieved, right? Like it certainly is harder to divine items, it is easier to exalt
hát
them.
ugyanígy végre
The
köré
economy survived, life goes on,
például nem volt
continue to make
Harbingerben nem volt sár.
whenever we feel like it affect the economy, but it's sometimes good to just cause a bit of a shift in how people value items, so you don't get entrenched values, you don't get people believing, oh, this item is 6x forever, you know, it changes.
Nem mondtam, hogy sok item, szóval van egy item, ami
régen többet használtuk a Divine-t, mint az Exile-t.
This is like seriously, like, oh, I had entirely all my money in Bitcoin and now it's worthless, right? Like, diversify, right? Again, economics.
Nem az a van rajta.
Multiple economics lessons today.
Market Exile will set you up for life. Have a diversified portfolio of currency items.
Okay. It's really
currency. Keep some rares, keep some crap.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you got to invest in one of the kind items, right?
Some old skin maps, maybe alternate.
Oh yeah,
I have this red beak on my account from the early race seasons. Like I'm talking, I logged in to do races back in 2013. Literally testing.
Milyen jól lenne megcsinálnak, ugye nem kell, hogy a bosszokat speckelni. És megcsinálták úgy, hogy az
Wait, is it? I'm pretty sure I have one of those.
Most már nem kell kivenned a shapert, hogyha a shapert farmolsz meg ilyenek.
So invest in a variety of different items in your standard portfolio if you don't want to get wrecked by economic changes.
If only I played in standard, I'd be rich. It's so good. It's interesting to see some new Var skills. It's certainly been a while. I tried to like look up exactly when, and I think 3.3 Incursion was the last time, which was get ready, 17 leagues ago. So powerful, longer cooldown or like ultimate skills can make gameplay quite a bit more engaging.
Ja, de az jó, hogy
and a lot of people love Var skills for that reason. It's certainly an underutilized skill category, though. It's not something you add new skills to all the time. So how do you decide then whether to make a skill a Var skill or just a regular skill that does a similar thing?
Well, if we're trying to come up with an ultimate skill, Val skills are ones that we have a control over you only using periodically, whereas regular skills we generally don't put big cooldowns on unless there's a bypassable thing. So if it's something where there's a good cooldown bypass mechanism, then it will probably be a regular skill. Now, the thing we're doing with Val skills is we want to buff melee. There are a number of like you may be thinking, wow, that's a lot of changes to melee, or you may be thinking, where are all the melee changes, depending on whether you happen to notice stuff. But the changes to endgame unique weapons affect melee, the Val skill stuff affects melee in a way I'll discuss in a second. There's a bunch of other bits and pieces, like melee splash is being added to as a node on the
Ultimátum az 2021 május.
I'll talk about the details because it's secret, but you'll find there's some totem mastery that affects melee in an interesting way. So there's a few bits and pieces that together actually do make quite a cohesive set of melee buffs, but the theory with the Val ones is we targeted a set of weaker melee skills. But previously, if the player is using that skill, they just do the damage they were doing. And rather than just saying, oh, we're going to give the skill a little bit more damage, which has various issues, we've created a Val version, which at face value means that every X attacks, you get to do a more powerful one, which is an indirect buff. But we've tried to design many of these Val skills so that they also directly buff the main version, like Val Cleave is an example, where if you're using Val Cleave occasionally, your cleaves themselves are more powerful. And so it's doing more powerful attacks sometimes and increasing the power of your other attacks the rest of the time. And because of the change where using the Val gem gives you the regular version of the skill, then there's no excuse not to be using Val Cleave if you were playing a Cleave character. And so overall, there are a lot of Val skills there that cause melee characters to be quite a lot more powerful. It also meant that we could, for example, target skills that we thought needed it. Now,
hogyha be tudnátok állítani, be lehetne állítani, hogy amikor betölt a vászkill charge, azonnal nyomja el a sima skill-usnál is.
And the answer is it's far better than the other melee skills.
De mondjuk ezért opcionális lenne, tehát nem muszáj, nem akarod, csak hogy mondjuk te pont a cleave-nél, nem egy extra gombra mondjuk odafigyelhetsz, vagy charge-ra, hanem csak vered a cleave-et, mint egy igazi majom, mint hogy a melee játszani kell. És akkor amikor van, akkor van, és akkor eltolja ennyi.
De annál pont a lényeges, hogy a rare mobot ölni vele.
So, yeah,
hát de 20 szekes buffod van, baszod. De nem akarod érteni.
Radius not enough. Just give it a mini headhunter.
20 szek alatt lekléred a mapot.
Should do.
Hát jó.
A Val skills then Exile 2 with its altered skill fit.
Lehet, hogy érted, egy pakon felszekelsz egyet, ezt akkor erre meg pont nincs.
Amúgy csak egy mod vagy full HH effect?
Frozen Legion is a pretty big news as well. So to clarify for people who missed a particular detail about it, it's actually a spell that summons statues that then attack with your weapon.
Early mappingra egyébként Inspired Learning szerintem kurva erős, 24 szek.
So you've done it now. There's nothing to stop you from casting a spell that shoots your bow's arrow or attack that casts a spell that then does another attack. Is this something you're going to explore more?
Tudod rerollolni a Watcher Zite, azt szerintem az kurva jó egyébként.
De azt tudod, milyen ritka lesz.
Igen. Az memória kell.
De 6 modos, 6 kliens farmerek ennek egyet.
És memóriába kell harvest
multibox.
Majd látod egyszer azt a beastet, és akkor nagyon örülni fogsz neki.
Multibox bestiázó.
Shards have problems. Okay, so we designed Path of Exile to get away from the concept of there being a homogeneous gold currency in games, right? And I understand every league we do, we introduce gold in it, but that's, within the confines of that particular scope. But overall, in main Path of Exile, we want to make sure that the currency items have fluctuating values relative to each other. It's very important as part of the way that trade works. And so taking something like Divine Orbs, that are the de facto currency for high-end trades, and adding a granular, proportional, like Divine Sense thing, is not something that we would do unless there was a good reason for it. And so we'd have no plans to add divine shards. We think it's okay to use cheaper currency as the divine shards. Like you can take shards and turn them into divines for trade with the mechanisms. The value fluctuates, but that's what we want to do.
X-shardot adán leköptek.
Az, hogy X-shardnak most kikenszerezték a trade-et például.
És azt mondták, hogy adott szét inkább köcsög, és így hát jó, akkor adom a szét.
Literálisan blokkoltak X-shardot. Miről beszél?
Yeah, so it's like Val Double Strike, for example.
The attack onto plane asks, does Val Flicker attack one target multiple times? So does it have like boss applications then, or is it more about pack clear?
Yeah, against a single target, it will do every single hit against that target.
Very anime.
Juggernaut
cool. Okay.
It is very anime, yes.
Let's talk crafting and league mechanics a little bit. So challenge leagues in Path of Exile have always been a place for you guys to experiment with systems. Some of them intended to go core, if they work out, for example, but otherwise others are like never really intended to go core, and they're just specifically for that. But even in that case, I imagine there's a chance that they can give you some useful information to inform future design. So crafting systems have been a bit of a trend lately, I notice, with leagues. Like Sentinel Recombinators, for example, and Lake of Calandra Mirroring. Some of these crafting systems end up being particularly liked by the players too. I think people really like the Recombinators. Are these sorts of new crafting systems designed with becoming core features in mind, or are they more experiments to explore future design possibilities? And is crafting systems something that you're keen to keep experimenting with?
We want to introduce something new in every league, a new way of getting items, or a new thing you can do with items. We found that if we leave it in the game just as a de facto thing, then you accumulate dozens and dozens and dozens of systems that create both power creep and complexity creep for the way the crafting works. And that's good. Path of Exile is meant to have that stuff, and power creep is natural, and there's no big problem there. But we have found that introducing stuff like recombinators and then turning it off until we've had a good think about how it fits in is probably safer. Like a lot of expectations with Harvest would have been reduced if we hadn't reintegrated it into the game before we were ready to and before we fully understood the consequences of that. And so with the mist from Lake of Calandra or the recombinators, we are looking for ways that we can bring them back. And we do plan to continue to introduce systems like this, some of which will stick around, some of which won't. An example is Sanctified Relics in the Sanctum offer a lot of character power. And that's a Sanctum-specific thing. We don't expect that Sanctified Relics will necessarily exist after Sanctum is finished. Maybe we make it core, maybe we don't, maybe we keep them, maybe we don't. But they're a thing for that league that let you experiment with builds that you otherwise wouldn't be able to. There are a lot of things in there which let you push your build further than you normally would. And that's something that's cool about the Sanctum League. It may be that it becomes a permanent part of Path of Exile later, and we are looking for ways to bring stuff back. Like, I don't know if this is actually a thing, but at least in our planning,
one of the things that the monster mods could cause, you know how they have those special drops that occur that we were speaking about a few minutes ago, one of the things that they could drop was the mist that mirrors from Calandra, for example, the one that gives you the 2 currency items. I don't know what form that will be in, if it's in 320, we're still sorting out the details of some of the exotic ones like that. But that's an example of us taking a system that was used as a reward mechanic for a league and then making it a rare reward from another system in the game.
Cool. Speaking of things that potentially can come back in the future, is there any word on Ultimatum?
Oh, what?
Ultimatum is split into 2 pieces. There's the boss fights with the uniques. They're back in the game, as of like last league, I think, or the one before. Time is a blur. And then there's the actual Ultimatum mechanic. Now, we have a plan for the Ultimatum mechanic, and we've mentioned there is a plan for a while, and that plan is not due yet, but it is coming at some point until it changes. Having said that, the offer/deferral system in Sanctum does feel a lot like it. This is where we say, here is a thing, or you can keep going in order to double it, essentially, but with quite a lot more doubling going on. And so players who liked the risk of Ultimatum will certainly like that mechanic.
Interesting, yeah, I can see
milyen válasz volt?
Very briefly,
nem figyeltem oda, mert le voltam tavaly. Mit mondottam, úgy TLDR?
How was the play interesting?
Azt mondta, hogy nem.
A Sanctum az majdnem olyan. Csak hogy örüljünk
annak. Are very positive. That's really good to see. I'm glad to see they're enjoying it. And hopefully those who couldn't get into the alpha and who are interested in that mode can have a chance to check it out.
Ez meg most olyan lesz, mint az ultimátum, csak másik kicsit.
Is Ruthless a mode that you want to keep making changes to long term, like rebalancing skills specifically for the mode, for example?
We will do some Ruthless specific skill balance. Currently, the focus was on getting fundamentals in place, like getting the mode to function. And then if we find time later, we'll be able to use it to make whatever changes are needed on specific skills. And to some extent, with, as you know, with the way Path of Exile works, if there's a skill that's dominant and somewhat trivializing stuff, then we won't have any qualms about ruthlessly nerfing that in that mode. Now, there's a fundamental philosophy difference, right? A player who's playing the main game will get upset if we nerf their skills. And this is because it's the way they like to play Path of Exile. If we just decide we hate minion characters one day, then all these people who come to Path of Exile to enjoy playing minion characters as a reliable way they can engage with the game would be upset that now they can't do the thing they like. In Ruthless, all bets are off. We will make whatever changes we feel like, and we'll stay hard, we'll have to adapt.
Akkor a heavy strike-osok már
Ruthless players are big boys, they can deal with this.
A legnagyobb szavazás az évben megint mehetne, hogy vajon lesz unintentional
changes, and very likely that those changes are not the same as balance changes that we do in the core game. In the core game, we want to make sure all the archetypes are viable and there's good diversity and that kind of stuff, but
nem sok development.
in Ruthless, we have other objectives.
I'm going to spam you with some uncategorized random questions.
Senki nem fog Ruthless játszani.
Kyle MC asked, how does quantity and rarity affect the Sanctum? I'll append to that another question I saw someone ask.
Amúgy én azt tudom elképzelni azt, hogy lesz egyébként egy ilyen paint-champ emberek, akik direkt ott fognak amúgy versenyezni.
Igen, ez mind a 2 emberre kell balanszolni.
Amúgy Ventraik tényleg mondták, hogy amúgy nem annyira gáz a dolog.
And they drop items, so it's not like, you know,
aztán majd kiderül.
The goal is that when you're mapping, it doesn't reduce the amount of items drops you get by going and playing Sanctum. You do get drops, and those monsters are technically unique monsters, so technically they're reduced, and quantum rarity do affect that. So going into the Sanctum, killing some monsters is roughly similar to killing monsters on the map that you came from.
Vagy nincs elég development time-ünk rajta, vagy amúgy szerintem nagyon-nagyon várják egyébként a Diablo egy release-t, és azzal együtt akarják így.
Nagyon, mert belegondolsz, nagyon gáz, milyen régóta bejelentették már.
De miért lenne gáz?
Yeah, kicks in right at the beginning, so basically you start doing your first Sanctum at level 2 or whatever, you know, as you get into the coast, and you probably won't get very far in those Sanctum runs, but it's a good opportunity to start out. Start accumulating some relics and so on, and you'll need them because later on it gets really hard. There are some things in the Sanctum, like the special endgame uniques, that only you dropped if you are very high in maps, because they're very, very powerful mechanical things. But yeah, it does play throughout the entire
campaign. De honnan tudod, hogy miket csinálnak? Hát oké,
lehet, hogy csinálnak.
Jó, de lehet, hogy csinálnak új asszetteket, lehet, hogy csinálnak egy csomó új dolgot, azért, mert akkor, amikor bejelentették, nem mutatták, vagy nem mondták, az nem azt jelenti, hogy nem csinálják.
Hát lehet, hogy lesz valami új fész.
De érted, csak 3-4 év alatt komplet új játékokat fejlesztenek le. Ezek egy kampányt tudnak kiadni.
Igen, csak ők közben ezt a játékot is csinálják. Lehet, hogy tényleg annyi emberük nincsen, hogy...
Hát persze, ha meg nincs ezt a csapatod rá, akkor meg ne jelents be olyan ambiciózus dolgot, ami meg 1000 év múlva fog kijönni. Mert érted, akkor még volt hype-ja. Most meg már egy meme.
I know, it's stupid, isn't it? But we had to do that because it's fair and because of divination cards that you could have been hoarding and all the other things. So yeah, you get some free ridiculous items in standard. If you have diversified into them.
Standard chat traders.
Számomra tökre úgy érződött, hogy volt egy Exile-kon, és akkor mondani akartak valami nagyot. Na srácok, itt a Poe 2, nem jön ki soha, ja meg itt a Poe mobil, arról még szerintem azóta nem lehetett hallani egy hírt se.
Na jó, mondjuk ezt a részét megértem, hogy azt az Exile-kon miatt meg kell mutatni minden durva dolgot, de
a Poe mobilt ugye felrobáltatva.
Mondták, érted, aznak hát majd fél év előtte megnézzük,
this means in standard the old divination cards are now worth more.
De amúgy akarnak egyébként a Future-ről beszélni, azt nem tudom, hogy ez már volt-e, vagy nem volt-e. Tehát azért ott majd lesz
any plans to decouple melee from buffs granted by totems, Ancestral Protector or War Chief?
This is actually a hot topic internally. I don't know the answer. I think it's the case where our designers acknowledge this is a problem and are looking for solutions, but maybe we've doubled down on it a little bit in this one because of that totem mastery I mentioned.
Igen, szerintem a Poe 2-vel még nem kell foglalkozni, amikor jön.
Doug Izolas, will Ruthless launch on console at League launch too?
I believe so. Yeah.
Great. Lots of automated questions, which we already asked. Theory Crafter and many other people ask, is Reforged prefix/suffix coming back in some shape or
Hát szerintem nincs itt terben, vagy pedig...
Igen, azt mondta, hogy hát itt is úgy van, hogyha többet akarsz, akkor tovább mész.
Itt is vannak mobok.
Hát igen, két része volt, 20 van a boss, meg van a mechanika, de itt a Sanctum, ez hasonló.
Kotti meg van a link, hogy Yes or No videója.
Micsoda?
It's likely to be at League launch or within a day or so.
Azt nem vágom ennyiből.
Spooky asks, Chris, can you please share your current thoughts on the loss of the historic buff?
Igen, vagy nem? Hát az ott... Yes or no? Oh my god!
This is one of those tricky things where like...
Okay. But it highly depends on the shit. No! Yes
we feel
or
people
no?
completely misunderstood what is there, and like we didn't want to go on a big rant and try to correct people, but we posted some numbers at some point during the league and then left it. But a play like it boils down to this: if you're a regular player playing regular content, as we can see based on like looking at what regular players are doing, and by regular I mean people in red maps, then there is no loss of anything. It's better. Like Sentinel is higher than it was previously, and people didn't believe us. They said doubt. They weren't happy with that, so we just stopped trying to push the point. If you were one of those groups that were juicing stuff to insane degrees with 6-person parties and all the crazy stuff going on and using exactly the right league mechanics with exactly the right stuff, then yeah, absolutely there was a nerf there. And for some reason, the community like feeling about this was that we nerfed the average person. Like, it's a little bit of a Robin Hood thing where we tried to take from the rich and give to the poor. The communication around the whole thing was poorly done. We didn't explain it correctly, we didn't communicate about it, we didn't really understand the nature of the changes fully ourselves. But where we got it to with the buffs we did was better than where it was before. Unless you were doing a situation. And so it was frustrating for us because we felt that the miscommunication had kind of... The miscommunication is our fault, but we felt the whole situation kind of ran away and caused people to really hate the loot situation more than it should have. I think that this has taught us a lot of lessons about communication, but there's no need to further improve drops related to that. The amount of currency and stuff that you're getting, and uniques, especially uniques that you're getting, for regular gameplay involving a variety of different leagues does exceed what it was in 318. It's just that if you're playing crazy Imperium style stuff as we described it, then you're certainly getting less, and that was an intentional part of the change.
Has there been some sort of change to the way that you're like approaching the reveals and the patch note and stuff? Maybe like how you're describing something? Because you don't, like you historically you've never revealed everything, like there's a lot of stuff that's considered not in patch note.
Historically we've tried very hard not to go we feel that
hogyha úgy marad, mint amilyen volt előtte, akkor az meg crasheltetik a gémet
but more than a decade we have followed that policy. Having said that, we should have talked about the changes to the quantity and rarity bonuses from different league content because it does affect decisions people are making. There was stuff before that was really juicy and everyone wanted to play that, and we tried to make it more fair so the leagues were roughly and that's something that should have been communicated, and we certainly learned the lesson there.
De ők se szerintem.
The lack of communication there is not malicious.
Hát, hogy mennyire kell visszavenni, vagy hogy lehet ezt jól megoldani.
Vissza kell venni, mert ez is
számít. Ugye legegyszerűbb, hogyha visszaveszik, szar volt most, oké.
Trédelnek fél órát, összeszedjenek minden izét, mixi-maxi csúszolásnak az értékét, bemennek 6 fővel, negyed alatt letolnak egy mapot, és 3 káosz.
Szerintem pont azért nem kellett volna nerfelni ezt, mert egyrészt sok idő összetapolni, nagyon kevés ilyen lúpan, aki ezt csinálja, tehát annyira nem lehet volna befolyással az ekonomira, hogy úristen, ezek a juicerek szétkúrják a software trade economit, mert van 3 ilyen team.
Ezt úgy kell nézni amúgy, hogy egy idő után tehát hogy az egész ez tolódik mindig, és akkor egy idő után, tudom én, egy évig ugyanígy ment volna, akkor lehet, hogy az átlag playernek is ilyen lett volna az experience, érted?
És akkor kellett volna lejjebb vinni, igen.
De nem jó, hogyha akkor viszed lejjebb, mert akkor már nagyon fáj mindenkinek. Itt most mindenki rinyál egy kicsit, azt talán el van felejtve. És a Harvest-tel például pont ez volt. Na, az például szerintem mindenkinek fáj. Az a túl sokáig lett, az a túl sokáig vártak, az a ment egy csomó ideig, azt most...
Meg, hát,
úgy a Harvest, mint Triadon.
A Harvest-nél már csak a Triadon fáj jobban.
De tényleg, hát én ezt így látom.
Na, hol a patch notes?
Nem tudom, de vége.
Vége? Akkor
Mehet a gémelés.
Gondolom most jön mindjárt.
Akkor indítsad.
Hozok egy teát. De én indítom.
Lehet, hogy újra fog indulni, mert izénél volt mondjuk a szó.
Na, a takácsot is szíven ütötte a Harvest-esség.
Genyó. Boxot hoztolják. Már kommentem.
Takácsot rendes szíven ütötte a Harvest-ágot.
Azt viszont már látom is magam előtt Change-be ligálnál, hogyha tényleg maponként egy lesz, hogy azt növelni fogják.
Hát az olyan weird egyébként. Meg én még azt akartam megkérdezni egyébként, hogy ezek szerint akkor az, hogy az a cucc, az vajon mapzóna alapján van egyébként szerintetek? Vagy mi alapján lehet? Aha, mert hogyha
hát
most bemész a főbosszhoz, érted? Azt mondjuk bemész tier 1-es mapra, érted? Vagy...
Ugyanúgy, ahogy a templom is, meg ezek is ellenek, most ez nem olyan bonyolult.
Hát Alvánál úgy működik, nem? Hogy ami a legnagyobb tier, akkor ahhoz scale-elődik a...
Ugyan szuper bonyolult a matek, hogy a map tierek átlaga +3, vagy valami ilyesmi.
Ja, akkor nem lehet kisajtolni.
Jó, hát ezt könnyen megoldanám, érted, ami a legnagyobb futott mapod, ahhoz bizonyul az end bosshoz kész.
Mint abban 500 ilyen mechanika, ami így működik, úgyhogy nem tudom, az már nézel.
Hát... Ja, jó lehet amúgy. Koncepció jó, csak megvalósítás, azt még nem tudjuk, hogy milyen. Bár akkor remélem, bár ebből kiindulva, akkor a következő liga az lesz, Auto Chess valahogy, Exile Chess.
Nem tudom. Nekem ezt tetszett amúgy.
MOBA is lesz, akkor az jövőre lesz. Tehát az Exile MOBA.
Nem hoztolták át? Játszol a gyerek, hogy Dead Game. Nem áll, ez egész normális volt, baszki.
Kicsoda?
Ez a... LOL, az Avoiding the Puddle is nézte a streamet, mi a fasz.
Így overall jó volt, de hát bazdmeg ez a két új skill is, az egyik full szar, én nem is értem azt, ami intent csinálhatta bazdmeg. Összegyúrtak, srácok, összegyúrok két skillt egybe, bazdmeg, ez durva.
Azért MP-nek a title-ja. New League Announcement React Stream Group POV. Mikroják azért.
Úgy tudom elképzelni a reakciókat, mint a...
Skara is nézi.
Várjál.
Kacsi öreg, Gazi TV. Párszor, rohadtul a bígyét kezdtem megcsipálni. Amúgy Pox ezzel a VRF build amúgy nagyon meta streamer lett egyébként.
Ja,
emlékeztem, amikor még kurva nagy senki volt a haverjával együtt most hogy hívták?
Ó, nem tudom én, ez azért szerintem nem
egy kurva nagy senki, milyen rendes tőle.
What? No, hát alap podcastben is ő volt, miről beszélsz.
Jaj, hagyjuk már, hogy hívták a haverját, az ex-veterán katonát, aki egy fogyatékos fasz volt?
Nem tudom.
Baszek, aki thanks for the scare.
Divide for scare. Xenocide.
Xenocide, úristen.
Ez lehet a Party POV
most. Vambox amúgy elég OG streamer szerintem.
Ez a Exile. Jött a patch notes?
Ja, jött a patch notes. Igen, köszi audio. Be se tölt amúgy. Szétrobbantották a felhőszervereket amúgy.
Azt a mindenit.
Basszik, nem áll, Ctrl F5-dik.
Oh, stinky.
Honey poop.
Bénen 25% lesz effektron.
Mi? Már benn vagy?
Persze.
Ja, a Cloudflare-t még nem lőtték fel.
Na,
Béna backend.
Új liga már így van kírva, hogy no 3 month challenge league, már most már odaadték egy 3 hónapos.
És én még emlékszem azért, amikor egy lakásban éltünk Zinóval. Emlékszem az egész videóra, úgy bejön post, jó, mindenetben, jó, nézd ezt a hülye Shadow volt, jó, beszoptatott engem, és itt az beírja, thanks for scare.
Divide for scare.
Free Zana, thanks for scare. Úristen, geci az ember amúgy. Oh my god! 20,000 armor! Várj a fehér mobokat, geci, hogy 2 percig. Oh my god, 3 endurance charges during the fight!
Facebreaker build-up mindig. Na jó.
Conti amúgy elment valahova, de azt a tutoriát mindjárt elkezdi, aztán mehetünk. Én meg próbálom vadászni a 4-es investigation-okat.
Itt van a Acilis Disfavor. No longer has plus 2 levels of sockety support gems.
Mit kell nézni?
Van már patch notes, meg közben te csinálod a tutoriát.
Az igen, Geci, hallod, az Acilis Disfavor-ön. Az Acilis Disfavor-ön 10 weapon range lesz. Mi a fasz?
Lehet?
Videókártyás cucc miatt, vagy nem tudom.
Ja, hát végülis Dani mondta, hogy annak nagy tetején nincs amúgy. Bazd nekem Bad Game Free van azóta is.
Minek?
Ő kapcsolt ki a launcher option-be, viszont kapcsolt ki minden ray tracinget, DLSS performance-ra.
Amúgy az új Disfavor érdekes.
Ja.
A DLSS performance-on fossul néz ki, ami?
Nem performance, bocs, mi az, hogy hívják? Balance, bocs. A performance az tényleg fossul néz ki.
Mert amúgy jól néz ki?
Amúgy egyébként annyira nem néz ki. Annyira nem néz ki fosztatosan.
Revertelték a voltaxikot.
Nem áll, Geci, úgy nagyon hangos. Nem áll, bassz meg rohadt hangos.
Azért mondjuk kapott egy 100% increase fizz damage-et a Savior.
Gyerekek, én nem tudom megnézni, engem a Cloudflare kilőtt a francba.
Én sem tudom megnézni.
Téged én is kilőlélek. De a Disfavor buff az jól néz ki, ez érdekes.
Revertelték a izét, voltaxikot 100%-kal.
Az a 10 weapon range, az nem kicsi, bazd.
Micsoda, voltaxik újra?
Jó, oké, két dolgot kérek, légy most az elsőre keresetek rá.
Bejön, Ctrl F, rugging, nem talál.
Oh no!
Nem talál semmit a rugging.
Minion, és a minion szóra.
Lehet kivették.
Minion. Fix the bugware SRS exists. Hát akkor ezt beszólt.
Oh no.
Legjobb magyar 40 000 csapat.
Első 6-os fokozat túlélők, írd oda.
Legsötétebb hullám Magyarországon.
Első 6-os fokozat túlélők.
Na figyelj, ezt a Kitabas Feast buffot figyeld. 25-ös melee splash helyett 30-as.
A Dankmeister helyett csak írjál Dankot, és akkor van még pár karaktered.